Coast to Coast. Your coast-to-coast source for wedding planning and info is live. The Weddingzilla Podcast. The Weddingzilla Podcast. Everything and everyone you need to hear while planning your wedding. Or even just thinking about it. The Weddingzilla Podcast. Featuring interviews and advice from some of the top professionals in the wedding industry. Connect. Facebook. Instagram. Connect on Facebook and Instagram. At The Weddingzilla. At The Weddingzilla. And even submit ideas for future episodes. Welcome to the Weddingzilla Podcast.
Hello. Welcome to the Weddingzilla Podcast. My name is Wyatt, and we have Matt. Say hello, Matt.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Here's Matt from Washington, D.C. area. Good to be on.
And today, and then today we have a special guest. We have Courtney Haynes from One Sweet Day Wedding Planning out of Ventura County, California. Say hello, Courtney.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. So,
this is our first wedding planner, isn't it, Wyatt? Our first wedding planner here?
This is our first wedding planner. Yes. Great. I'm excited because I've been courting Courtney to be on the show for like how long now?
A while.
Well, she made it.
She made it. So I'm so glad she said yes. So let's just get into it. So, Courtney, tell us a little about you. Tell us about your company. How'd you get started?
Yeah. So I'm Courtney with One Sweet Day Events, and I did my first wedding June of 2007. A friend of mine knew I always wanted to be a wedding planner, and she got engaged and said, all right, you can plan my wedding. I'm going to be difficult, and I'm not going to pay you. And I'm like, I'm in. And for that year, we had lots of fun times together, lots of hard times. But before that, I worked as a construction project manager. So I already had the foundation of wedding planning in the regards of doing competitive bidding, reading and reviewing contracts, competitive timelines, the different projects, in the same time frame. It was a lot of my background came from that experience. And you can't do multi-level things and then leave that type of industry. But I did. I left that industry for wedding planning, and it was essentially everything that I had done for that company. I just flew right into wedding planning. And instead of subcontractors, we had vendors. And instead of, a year timeline, I had a 1-day timeline. And all of the rest of the stuff was essentially the same. So I just kind of dived right into it and, started reviewing contracts, started hiring all the vendors. And, we worked that year together. I learned a lot in that year. And coming down to the day of the wedding, there was things that, I didn't know. I didn't know until I had done it. And then I learned from it. And then I did 2 of her friends' weddings later that year. And then I did a few more. And then finally I quit my full-time job in 2011 to be able to pursue this business. And now I'm doing about 30 weddings a year. So here I am.
Well, that's excellent, Courtney. That's excellent. Now that you just concentrate on that and nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I don't miss it because construction was crisis management every day, every second, every minute. And I'm good at crisis management, but I like a happy couple to deal with during that time. And ultimately, I get to walk next to them on the best day of their life. And what's happier than that? And I love the organization, and I love the floor plans, and I love all of that detail because I'm very type A personality, and everything is color coded, as Wyatt will tell you. And I love it. I'm obsessed with that. And that's the type of person that you want to do your wedding. You want somebody that's going to keep everybody organized, but is also a team player. And I came from a very strong background of bleeding all of these different subcontractors together on one project. While I'm doing the same thing now, I'm bleeding all of these different vendors together on this one incredible wedding.
Definitely. I mean, I think I maybe have mentioned on a previous podcast that there's certain venues that I only will work with a certain coordinator. Well, Courtney is that coordinator.
Thank you.
If I can't get booked with her, then forget it. I'm not doing it.
Oh, you're too sweet.
I think one of the challenges, for DJs, and one of the challenges for a wedding coordinator, or could be one and the same. And here's what I mean by that, Courtney, is I'm an experienced DJ. I'm not I don't ever consider, I don't like the term the best DJ ever. I kind of do in a joking way, but there's no, best DJ ever. There's some really good DJs out there, but there's some that are more experienced than others that have been in the business a while, kind of know what's going on, are flexible coming in, et cetera, et cetera. And when a DJ is coming into an event that I'd like to say is experienced, and they're dealing with an inexperienced wedding coordinator, it can make our life difficult because some of the decisions that we make don't help the flow of the evening because of their inexperience. Now, on the other hand, the same thing works, I think, in your side of the ball, is that when you've worked really hard to plan this unbelievable event for this lovely couple, and then in walks, a really inexperienced DJ or one that thinks they know it all, and because everything really comes through the DJ at that point, at least through the microphone. And tell me a little bit about that, your experience. How do you feel about that, or is there a way that you circumvent that prior to the day?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because it's very true. It goes both ways, and something that I have tried to over the last few years really get away from is the friend DJ. And so I'm at a point now where, if they are bringing on a friend DJ, I just won't take on the wedding. And sometimes you can't get away from that. They've hired me before they've hired the friend DJ, or maybe they're just a professional DJ, but they have a real problem with coordinators. And I find that a lot, where they come in and say, I've never had a good coordinator. Coordinators just ruined my life. They're so terrible. And I come in and it's almost a game to me. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm going to be the best dang coordinator you've ever worked with. And I'm going to blow your mind. And it's kind of a challenge for me, though I hate it, because then I feel like I have to continuously prove myself. And going back to the construction thing, I was a young girl and I was the lead, and I had to prove myself every minute of every day that I knew what I was doing and I could handle it. Whereas now I'm a wedding planner and I come in, they're like, oh, you're this cute young girl. Great. You know everything. So it's one of those things that now I have to prove myself all over again to this DJ. And I have had the most terrible, terrible, terrible stories with DJs that are professionals that just don't have the experience, or maybe they're a professional that does clubs, but they don't do weddings, and it's a very different animal. So usually I draft the timeline before before they get involved, and then I send them a copy of the timeline and I say, I'm very open, this is my timeline, I am flexible and moving things around, tell me how you like to do things and let's collaborate. Like, I'm very easy to work with, and I kind of try to put that out there in the beginning so that they know that they can ask me. And sometimes they do ask and we collaborate and everything's fine, even if they're a little difficult. But even on the day of, I've had DJs that they're like, throw my timeline out or don't even have my timeline and just kind of do their own thing. And it breaks my heart because I'm basically, I tell them, that they can't really do what they want to do and I have to just take over, and I don't collaborate with them anymore. I make all the calls, and it's unfortunate to do that. But I've had DJs that tell me that too. They're like, if we have a coordinator that doesn't know what they're doing, I just have to step in and say, you're done and I'm in charge now. And then they have to just run the show. Because essentially, if there is no coordinator, you guys are the coordinators, which is hard for you to do it both.
That is true. Yeah. We usually sit with if I'm sitting with a client, and I'll ask them, I'll say, are you hiring an outside coordinator? And if they say, yes, we are, I say, okay, what I'm going to do is put in my 2 cents when we do a timeline. But I will say to the client, ultimately, who's in charge? Who makes if a decision on the day of has to be made about something, who is ultimately in charge? And if they say the wedding coordinator, then so be it. Then I yield. But if they say, well, let's say it's something, and I'll give you a quick example. I did a wedding, 2 weeks ago, and they were only throwing the bouquet. That was it. The bouquet, it was only formalities after cake cutting, which they did before we opened the dance floor. And it wasn't it was an in-house, it wasn't an outside coordinator, a planner, I should say planner, was not a wedding planner, but it was like the maitre d'. And let's say it was 8:00 and I was going at 10 or 10:30, and he's literally walking around with the bouquet in his hand. And he says, we need to throw the bouquet now. It's on the timeline. The dance floor was packed. I mean, packed. And I walked up to him and I said, no, we can't do that right now. We just got the floor going and we have 2 hours left. So I said, hold on one second. So I walked with him. I said, come with me. We walked right up to the bride and I said, do you want to do the bouquet now? We have plenty of time. And we could do it 10 minutes from now, 15 minutes from now. She said, Matt, do not stop this dance floor. Do not stop this dance floor. Keep it going. And, the guy kind of looked at me, in an odd way, like, oh, how, dare you? But it was like, no, how dare you? You were ready to stop, 150 people being on the dance floor having a good time when there was still plenty of time. But my point was, that's not a wedding planner. That was an in-house maitre d'. But, we go. Like I said, in the planning, I will put in my 2 cents, and then I say, you'll give this to your coordinator or wedding planner, and then you guys decide what it's going to do, and then I get the final timeline, and I go in, meet you. Hey, Courtney, I'm Matt. Hey, Matt. Let's do this, and then we work together as a team and knock it out. I think that's
well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's unfortunate that he was trying to like kill the dance floor, because I am the first one to flux my timeline if we've got this amazing dance set going, and as long as I still have the photographer, I can move things around as needed. And sometimes it's unfortunately the opposite, where you have an older crowd and they're not dancing as much, and we bump things up. But that's part of our experience together as being the professionals that will make those calls, and the client trusts both of us to work together to make those calls. So, I assume that I have the finish, the final decision, but I always know that it's a team effort. And I love working with people that understand it's a team and that we can't do it without each other. Mm-hmm. And you get those rare people that don't play like that. And it's so unfortunate. It makes you so sad.
I think the thing that I enjoy, working with Courtney is that we did that at a wedding at Spanish Hills, and you allowed me to flex. We had a good set going, and you let me go, and we collaborated on the timeline prior to, and I called and had asked you some questions, and I felt like we had a good synergy, and I felt like that's why one of the reasons why that event was so successful, and the couple was ecstatic, with everything that we did. And I also like, though, that you have that take charge personality too as well, and it was great where you kind of it's almost like we were in sync, because I even some of the bridal party was like, whoa, we better do this, otherwise Courtney's going to get after.
Yeah, I am popular, but in the nicest way.
Exactly, which I like. I mean, it just helped with the flow, kept people on point. Everybody still had a good time. Everyone. To me, it was. It truly was. It was a great experience, and that's why, you're always my first pick. So,
thank you.
Courtney, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Tell me, I'm assuming you do mostly ceremonies outside now, correct, or on premise?
Yes. I push for that.
You probably don't deal with it being in California as much as we do here. Maybe it doesn't rain as much there, but tell me, I think one of the challenges for wedding planners here, at least that I've run into, is sometimes, for example, it's summertime, we might get, showers coming in, and the wedding planner sometimes have to make a decision that the brides may not necessarily agree with. And what I mean by that is, as a DJ, when you're outside doing ceremonies, you have setup, you have equipment. We're usually the ones with the most expensive equipment out there being set up. The photographer usually has a camera around the neck, and if something comes in, rain or something, they run. Everybody runs, and the DJ standing there breaking, their equipment down. Is telling is when there's showers in the area, and look, we all want our clients to be happy on their very special day, and we hope it's sunny and beautiful for them and they can have their outdoor ceremony. But sometimes you have to make the unfortunate decision that we need to call off the ceremony being outside, and it needs to be moved inside. And for the safety of everybody, how do you deal with that, and what's your experience been like?
Yeah, I don't have that issue often, because as you said, we have California weather. I am very lucky that most of the venues I work at are the hotels, the country clubs, where we do have an indoor area, which makes it so that we can push off the decision a little bit longer. But I preemptively start talking to the client about it a few days before so that it's set in their mind that this could be a possibility. And I keep bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up over the course of the couple of days, just so that they know that this decision might need to happen. And then I give them a deadline of when we need to make that decision. And that deadline usually is not something I come up with. It's the rental company that needs to know about the chairs. It's the DJ that needs to know about the setup. It's the catering vendor that needs to know where we're putting the lemonade station. And they give me the timeline and when that decision needs to be made. And collaboratively, we make that decision, probably in advance. I have had it where the day of we've had to make that decision because we had some unfortunate weather that rolled in. And, I go to the bride and I make it seem like I'm letting her make the decision, but I'm really telling her this is what needs to happen. And you know what? It doesn't matter because rain is a good thing. And it rained on my wedding day. And I've been married almost 8 years now. And rain is a good thing. So I tell them that, and I just get real close and I hold their hand and we work through it together and we make the decision. And, I've never had any negative response from the client afterward. I had made a decision. We had rain in, I think it was May a few years ago. And we ended up having to spend almost $9,000 on a tent at McCormick, which I'm sure, Wyatt, you've worked at McCormick. It's an all outdoor garden venue. It's really beautiful. And we had to tent at that venue, and tenting at that venue is just like unheard of. But we had to make the decision 5 days out because the rain was forecasted and everybody wanted these tents, and the tents were first come, first serve. So we spent the money and reserved the tent. And the day before the wedding, it rained all day long, absolutely just coming down. And the bride and I looked at each other and we said, well, that was $5,000 well spent. Well, what happened the next day? Beautiful, nothing but sunny skies, the most amazing, beautiful blue sky. It was just like, man. So I put on the white hat and I say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to rip all the walls off the tent and we're going to open up the space as much as we can. So it's just a tent instead, or it's a canopy instead of a tent. And that made her so happy, just that little bit of extra effort. We went in, we took out all the walls, we moved some things around. We also included the cocktail hour outside of the tent, so it made it more of an open concept. And you know what? It was amazing, and no one would know the difference. So sometimes making those hard decisions, you also have to see the silver lining and remember that it is business, but it's also the client's best day of their life, and you have to make it as special as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? Good story.
Oh, thank you.
So, it was.
Stories.
We got a million of them.
So true.
So, Courtney, when someone's looking for a wedding planner or a coordinator, what questions should they be asking when they're interviewing them? How should a couple select a wedding planner or coordinator?
Well, I think vibe is the biggest thing. Like if people get on the phone with me and they're just vibing with me, it's like, why wouldn't you book me? We get along great. You like what I'm offering. You like my price. You like what's included in my package. You get this good feeling. You trust me. That's probably the biggest thing. You trust me. Then I should be your go-to. And I tell my clients with not only me, but in every vendor, you have a good feeling about them. You love them. You want them to be by your side the day of the wedding. Don't hesitate because for me, it's just me. I'm a very small boutique company. I run all the weddings. So dates are first come, first serve. And if you love me, but then you wait 2 months to book me, I might be already booked. And then what happens? You have to find your second best. Nobody wants their second best on their wedding day. So with anybody, I think that they should get on with you and, read reviews. I strongly suggest reading reviews, getting online, seeing what this company is all about, asking about staffing for the day of the wedding. I do weddings on my own, but my kind of thought process is about 75 guests for every one coordinator. So that's how I do my staffing, and to make sure that, that person that you're going to be hiring actually does have staff, asking if they're insured, if they have a license, if they have experience at the particular venue that you're working at, if they have particular vendors that they would recommend per the location. There are, several DJs that are amazing, but maybe there's only 5 that are great at this venue because it's super tricky because of XYZ. Or, photographer, well, this photographer mainly shoots inside, so why would you book them for an outside wedding? It's things like that. And then, the question that comes up a lot for clients asking me is, on the day of the wedding, if I carry any kind of emergency kit. And, most of my frienders call it my Mary Poppins bag, where I carry everything from fishing line to twine to gloves if I have to set up the cupcakes or donuts later on in the night, Band-Aids, scissors, flashlights.
Shoelaces?
It's what?
Shoelaces?
Yeah, no, I don't have shoelaces, but I could make shoelaces out of twine. I've had to recreate belts out of zip ties. I've had to MacGyver boutonnieres many times, many, many times. So I have all the things to remake a boutonniere, glue, tape, putty. I mean, all those random things. And I don't list that on my quote. Like, I have a Mary Poppins bag, but I try to tell people, I come prepared, and there's pretty much anything you might need the day of the wedding, I'm going to have it. And so I have them rest assured that, I've been in all types of situations, and I try to pack accordingly. So, yeah.
And
check this out, Matt. Check this out, Matt.
As well. If you haven't been there, Courtney, will you go out and visit the venue?
Oh, yeah. So in any of my packages, I include one in-person meeting at the location. Different packages include a number of meetings, but one of those meetings is reserved for the venue. They have up to 3 hours with me at the venue, whether I've been there before or not. I spend the first hour with the client, walking through the space, talking about the timeline, talking about the layouts, talking about all the details of the day, giving out my suggestions on how we could make things flow better, or if, there's something that I've done at this venue in the past that I think works really well. The second hour, I like to sit down with the director of the venue and go through their event order with them line by line and talk about my timeline into their event order. And then the third hour, I actually invite other vendors to join us. So if there's a DJ that wanted to come meet with us, or a photographer or a videographer, or maybe nobody wants to come, we're going to still spend 3 hours on going through all the details. So I don't want people to not hire me because I haven't worked at that venue, because every venue I've worked at, I've done it, for a first time. There is, great things to be said about venues that we've worked at many, many times because you have more experience. But I really spend a lot of time with my clients going through a lot of details to make sure that nothing is unforeseen.
Right.
Matt, check this out. So I met Courtney. The first time I met Courtney was at the Santa Barbara Bridal Show. And no joke about the Mary Poppins kit. I don't know where it came from, because I would not expect anyone to be packing, but a vendor broke a glass, or all these little marbles or whatever went everywhere. Guess who rolls up? Courtney with a dustpan and a broom. I mean, who brings a dustpan and a broom to a bridal show? Courtney does.
Yeah, so this is my rendition of how I met Wyatt. I'm on my hands and knees cleaning marbles, and this guy stands over top of me and he goes, "What did you break? Do you need some help?" I said, "I don't know what broke. Someone else broke something, and I'm just jumping in to help." And he said, "Are you a coordinator?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "I like you. You're a team player." And he gets on his hands and knees and starts cleaning up these marbles with me.
Exactly, because it wasn't even our booth. I mean, and we just immediately jump in. I mean, it was, I at that moment, I'm like, I want to work with her more often.
Yeah.
So
that was a good one, Wyatt. Thanks for taking me back to that. I remember that, and we became fast friends from there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, let's see. What questions, what details are important to you that the couple needs to give you? I mean, obviously, there's the basics of all the details of their wedding, but what are some let's say special questions that you think are kind of important to you that makes you get a vibe going with the couple?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I like to talk about with them is the family dynamics or dynamics of the wedding party that I might need to know. Last year, quite honestly, I called it the year of the mother of the bride. I had the most difficult mothers of the brides that I could ever imagine. And so it was something that I was really spending more time talking to the client about. what their mother wanted, what their mother needed, what their mother was expecting from me. And if they told me from the get-go that they had a mom that was, more on the challenging side, I asked them to bring their mom to our 3-hour in-person meeting so that their mom could have a sense of trust with me. Because if the mom does not trust me, but the client does, there's a little bit of friction. Mm-hmm. And this year so far has been a really great year where I've had really great clients and there hasn't been any crazy family dynamic, but I've had it where they're like, oh, well, my parents are separated and I didn't invite my stepmom. She might show up the day of the wedding. Like, what? Okay, I need to know this. Or at table 5, this guy's a recovering alcoholic and I put him at a table with people that aren't going to be drinking, but I just want you to know that like if he does start drinking, it's going to get crazy. And I kind of need to know some of those things. And other than that, really just emotions of the client. If there's anything that's like, a sore spot or something that, is important for them to share with me that, their grandfather passed away and this very special song, they asked the DJ to play it during dinner and that they're going to get a little emotional during that time. And, I know when it's happening and I'm there with a Kleenex, So things like that, I always tell people don't hold anything back from me. Like I'm the one that needs to know everything. Even if you think it's silly or unimportant, it might come up later that it's important to me. So, I'm a little bit of a therapist too, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love your answer on that. And I think why I would agree on this, we as DJs kind of deal with the same thing. For example, if I have, divorced parents in the group and, in the planning meeting, I'm sitting with them, oh, my parents are divorced. The first question I ask, is it amicable?
Right.
And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's like, am I walking into a hornet's nest? They're like, no, they get along, or no, they really don't get along. And so I don't like surprises. I'm not, I'm really not a therapist in that, but I like to know what I'm walking into. I had a wedding this past year and the grooms flat out said to me, and they were all from New Jersey where I'm from. And he was actually a police officer and here in the area where I live now in the Washington, D.C. area. And he said, look, Matt, my brother, he's going to kind of, come up and razz you a lot during the course of the evening. And I'm thinking to myself, and his brother's a grown man, I don't know, 40, 45 years old. And I'm thinking, why don't you just tell him not to? And sure enough, he was kind of pestering me during the evening and I was trying to play it off. But I thought, why did you not just tell him not, because I'm trying to do a job. I'm trying to do a job here. But I kind of chuckled him off. I handled them pretty well, but I was really glad at least he told me.
Right.
Because if he had not told, one thing, I don't like being blindsided.
Yeah, nobody does.
I don't do well with blindsides. It throws me off. And so if somebody is going to, kind of be rough around the edges, I do like to know that going in. So I love your answer to that. Excellent.
Yeah, agreed. I just don't know why you would hold anything back from the two of us, because we're really the ones that are running the show. We're the only vendor that is on site from beginning to end. The baker does the delivery, the florist does the delivery, the photographer is only there for a certain amount of hours. Like the DJ and the coordinator are start to finish the entire day. There shouldn't be any lapse of communication or anything held back. It just seems silly, like just that. And I guess maybe that's why I do such a long planning meeting, is so that people open up to me and, tell me things that maybe they hadn't thought about just because they've spent so much time with me.
So, Courtney, any other advice you would give to a couple who's planning their wedding, and they're looking for a wedding coordinator, a wedding planner, or just kind of in general? What advice would you have for them?
My general advice, and I did not coin this slogan, however, I use it all the time, and I try to bring this up as early as possible for the groom. This is advice for the groom. When your bride asks you a question, don't say, I don't care. Just say, I have no preference. That will get you a million attaboys, because you do care. You do care. You just don't have a preference. Honey, what kind of napkin fold do you like? Baby, I have no preference. Honey, do you think that we should do a champagne toast? I have no preference. And then when the groom actually speaks up and has a preference, that that's really important because he actually said something. And I have a baker friend of mine that she goes, I always know when it's Courtney's clients because they'll come and sit down and do a tasting and she'll say, oh, what do you think about this chocolate ganache? And the groom will say, I have no preference. And she slams her hand down on the table and she goes, you are One Sweet Day clients, aren't you? And they look at her and they just start laughing. So that is my biggest advice. And you'll, if you ever have my clients, you're going to hear them say that. And, my husband uses it now too. What do you want for dinner? I have no preference. So sweet, but yet gets him out of making any decisions. So
excellent answer. Love it.
And then just overall, I mean, if you're looking for a coordinator in general, you're already on the right path because honestly, it's so many years, venues were not requiring coordinators. Coordinators were not really a thing. You could get away with just having a DJ because they did so much of the planning and they did so much of the timeline. But if you're looking for a coordinator, you're already one step ahead. And, I've worked really hard to be on the preferred list at a lot of different venues. And that's where most of my referrals come from, is directly from the venue. And so I think that just even being on that path of looking around and finding someone that connects you. And, yes, you have a budget. Maybe you're going to go over your budget, but it's peace of mind that you're going to have somebody that you trust that's going to handle your day and, help you. I do a lot of things. I'm helping put on a veil or take off a veil. I'm helping the bride change her shoes. I'm bustling her dress. I'm putting on her garter so she doesn't have to wear it all night and it's not all sweaty when she has to throw it. And I'm making sure they have drinks and I'm getting her a bobby pin and I'm doing all those things, pinning on boutonnieres that I'm the bride and groom's best friend that day. I'm in their face just as much as the photographer is, but maybe not as invasive. Well, I guess bustling a dress can be a little invasive, but I try to be as calming as possible.
Well, it sounds like you're really proactive and you're really hands-on, Courtney. It sounds like you're doing some really good work out there in California.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Courtney, do you travel or you just do the Ventura County market?
I'm Ventura and Santa Barbara. I do travel on occasion. It's got to be the right fit. Honestly, I try not to anymore. When I first got started, I was real hungry and I was going to Vegas and I was going to San Diego and Long Beach and I was just all over and I would, stay the night in hotels and all that. And kind of where I'm at now is I really want to be home so that I can see my son and my husband a little bit on the weekend, maybe on Sunday if I don't have a wedding. It's nice to spend time with them. So I try not to travel, but if the opportunity comes up, I would love to. And anywhere that's driving, I'm happy to do. But sometimes the driving ends up being that it's a venue that I haven't worked at. And I'll be honest with the client, say, when I don't have an experience at that venue, it's a 3-hour drive for me. And, I would recommend trying to pull somebody off their preferred list. And I'm very open about that. I'm not going to just try to take on everything because I can. I try to be a little bit more selective and if I can be close to home, that makes me happy. Especially too, because a lot of my vendors are Ventura County. And so, I'd like to refer them as much as possible. And so it's hard if I'm going to take something on that's 3 or 4 hours away. Taking them with me is hard. Like I did a wedding in Napa. I think it was almost 5 years ago now. And we had to hire all people that I had never worked with before. And I really wanted to go to Napa and I really wanted to do this wedding. And this was before my son was born. So it was easier for me to just take off. But then I had to do all the research on people that are local out there and had to hire a whole new crew. And I just felt like it was fine. It was all great, but it's always nice to work with the people that I know are tried and true.
Makes perfect sense. So how does one get a hold of you?
So you can go to onesweetdayevents.com and you can fill out information on my website. My phone number's on there. I do call, I do text, my email. You can also just type in One Sweet Day Events into Google and it will bring up all of my website information. It'll bring up all of my reviews on Yelp, on Wedding Wire, on The Knot. I also tell my clients that they're happy to put that on their wedding website. So it might come up on somebody's wedding website, but you should be able to find me One Sweet Day Events. I do say the events on the end, because if you type in One Sweet Day, that Mariah Carey song will come up, which is fine. If that's how you remember me because of the One Sweet Day Mariah Carey song, I'm okay with that. But One Sweet Day Events.
That's excellent.
Awesome. All right, Courtney. Well, thank you for so much for being on the show. I believe our listeners got a lot of valuable information and a lot of great stories. Hopefully we'll get you back on. We'll talk about some other topics some other time.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate
Courtney,
it.
and good luck to you in your ventures out there in California. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
The WeddingZilla Podcast. Everything and everyone you need to hear while planning your wedding. Tons of resources are on our website, too. And you can submit ideas for future episodes. Visit theweddingzilla.com. Theweddingzilla.com. And stay connected. Stay connected on Facebook and Instagram. At The WeddingZilla. At The WeddingZilla. The WeddingZilla Podcast.